Welcome to What's a Beautiful Life Anyway? I'm your host, Jill Bennett. This is the channel that shares ideas to help you live your best life, because life can be beautiful if you live consciously. Welcome to this week's edition of What's a Beautiful Life Anyway? To live your best and most beautiful life, you want to be happy every day. Have you ever wondered what is the cause of those Monday morning blues? My guest today is Nuria Rodríguez, Nuria Nutrition. Welcome, Nuria.
Hello, thank you very much, Jill, for inviting me to your podcast today.
It's just lovely to have you here. It's such an important topic because Nuria is a registered nutritional therapist and health coach. She's based in London, but as you can tell from her accent, she is originally from Spain. And she does practice worldwide online. Nuria passionately believes in the power of food and lifestyle to support our health and well-being. Nuria, what made you want to be a nutritionist?
Well, this is a big question, really, in fact, because there wasn't just one single thing that made me become a nutritionist, but it all started for my love about sustainability and plants and nature and understanding. I studied permaculture and horticulture, and I realized about the power of plants and how the plants interact in their environment. And I always thought, what would be like in our internal environment, in our body? So I wanted to study nutrition for that reason. And I realized then about the power of food, about the power of plants. And since then, it was my mission really to reach as many people as possible, to share my knowledge and to share some practices that are going to support people's health. They're going to have more control of their lives, their health, and their happiness, and be more happy. So that was it, really. But one of the things, main things that helped me.
And I heard a lovely quote today that goes so well with that, where they say that there is no Wi-Fi in nature, but you'll get a better connection there.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah, I thought that's so beautiful, because we went through a stage in history, didn't we, of chopping down forests, and we didn't want anything to do with them when we used the wood. And I think it was in something like the 30s or the 40s, where, especially in Japan, it might have been a bit later, might have been the 50s, where they started doing research into the effects of us going out into nature, which is when forest bathing was first invented, for want of a better word. And they realized that the trees give off this chemical to repel things that would harm them, but that these chemicals they give off they work on our natural killer cells, so they're very, very beneficial to humans. And I just think, it's, we need to be in nature. We need to think more about plants and about the plants that we eat, and eat less animals, and it's so important for our health. Your practice is based on the principles of functional nutrition. We hear this word functional medicine a lot. What is functional medicine?
Yeah, it is basically, this looks into the root cause of problems, the root cause of health problems or health challenges. So it doesn't look at the symptoms, just the symptoms, and try to address those symptoms, but it tries to understand what is causing that. So it is like a deep dive and going to investigative mode and understanding what potential biochemical imbalances, what potential physiological imbalances we have, and in particular within my remit, what potential imbalances we could have based on the type of food or nutrition or nutrition the nutrition aspect in our body. So it's about understanding what is the root cause and understanding what is the interconnection between the systems, the body system. So it's not looking at, okay, the gut function, or separated to the endocrine system, or separated to the nerve system, or separated to the musculoskeletal system. It's about understanding holistically the body, all the body systems, and understanding what is the root cause of the problem. Yeah, that is.
Because there's different branches of medicine, aren't there? But they all boil down to the fact that every aspect of our body is linked. So our mind, our body, our skin, our gut, everything is linked, and you've got to look holistically if you want to make somebody well. You can't just rely on, oh, they've got a headache, give them a pill.
Yeah.
You know, that's very short term. You need to think, okay, what's actually causing this headache? I don't like taking tablets, and I don't even if I get a headache, I first of all drink more water, because usually I'm dehydrated, or I look at how much sleep I've had, or sometimes some of the things I've eaten. So you're right, it's a brilliant way to treat people rather than just looking at the symptom. And the research, sorry.
No, I wanted to say that it's very interesting what you said, you mentioned, because obviously all the body systems are connected, but especially I'm always fascinated about the skin, because you mentioned the skin. And I found it interesting how we tend to treat problems we have in our skin with topic creams, etc., and everything is from inside. Is the inside, looking at the inside. We need to look at the inside and see what manifestations, how whatever is happening in our body is reflecting on our skin. So it's fascinating, really.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And I know a lot of eczema and psoriasis and things are coming from internally. And you might get some relief. I mean, what's awful is so many medical doctors treat things like eczema with ointments that have petroleum ingredients in, and you think, my goodness, you don't want to put those on your skin. So looking at from the inside, you're going to have much more likelihood of success to solve your skin problems. And another thing that's really connected, and there's more and more research in this now that shows there's a clear connection between your brain and your gut. Could you explain how that works, please?
Yeah, definitely. So we have, and I wanted to refer a bit before I explain how that is connected, how the brain and the gut are connected. But I wanted to refer to that question you mentioned at the beginning in terms of the Monday blues.
Yes.
And I was thinking, in fact, the other day about, okay, all this festive season is coming, and we eat a lot, we drink a lot, and then it comes January, and we feel a bit depressed, and even after a weekend of going out and drinking, perhaps we feel a bit depressed. And I think the Monday blues term refers to a set of negative emotions that people have, especially on Mondays after a wild weekend. And it tends to be, or they say, is because, well, we don't want to face what it comes up on Monday. And looking at this historically, and I saw that in the American literature in the I think it was 1830s, and there was reference to this term Monday blues as the hangover state of workers after a long weekend of drinking, possibly sleep deprived, etc. And now, even, I mean, we have an awareness day in the Northern Hemisphere, which is in January. I think is one of the Mondays in January. I think it's the 3rd January of the month. And again, is to raise awareness of that state of mind. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder to what extent the negative emotional state is down to the weather, because apparently it was decided about that they based on an equation taking into account the climate and the weather, or it is down to what we don't, because we don't like our jobs, or perhaps it's down to what we have eaten the weekend or during these festives, or what we have drunk, because we know that affects the gut flora, and we will talk more about it later, massively. And we know that our gut flora and microbiota can change within days. So it was quite interesting to think, what is it? Why we feel like that? And what also knowing that, we might think what we can do about it before and after as well. So yeah. And then, so I wanted to connect that Monday blues really with...
And on that note of the Monday blues and the Blue Monday in January, there's been research, hasn't there, where people who normally have a very healthy life swap diets with someone who has a very unhealthy life, and they take all of their vital, heartbeat and cholesterol levels and, all the rest of blood sugar before they swap diets. And they have found that the person who has the terrible diet, who eats the healthy diet, their vital statistics change incredibly for the better. And the same with the one who suddenly eats the bad diet, theirs change incredibly badly for the worse. And it's usually only over a month. So you're right, that period over Christmas that we might have 2 weeks off work, we're drinking more, we're sleeping less, or we're having bad sleep because we're going to sleep after heavy food, rich fatty foods, lots of sugar, lots of alcohol, and then we might sleep longer, but it's a very bad quality of sleep. We're sitting in front of the television, or we're sitting with friends. So it's inevitable that you're going to feel absolutely rubbish in January unless you do something different.
Yeah. And it has to do a lot with that connection between the gut and the brain. That now, since the late 20th century, we start understanding as, yes, definitely there is a connection. There was also an understanding about the connection between the gut and the brain in about the 18th century or something like that. Yes, they were observing that, and there was an evolution in that thinking. However, we arrived to that time of the reductionism, where we had to study the different systems separately, and we started thinking, okay, everything, we need to specialize on things. And then until the late 20th century, we didn't start thinking about, again, that connection between the gut and the brain, which is essential, and it's amazing, basically, how it works. And so basically there is, in our gut, we have whole nervous system. We have about 100 million nerve cells in our gut, and our gut goes from obviously the mouth down to our rectum, and we have all these nerve cells as part of the enteric nervous system that we call. We have all these cells starting from the lower esophagus down to the rectum, and all these together with the microbiota, which is I'm going to elaborate a bit more just in case, but the microbiota is the community of microbes that we have. We have microbes all over our body, but now specifically we refer to the community of microbes in our gut, in our intestines, and which is, I mean, there are trillions basically, and they produce amazing beneficial chemicals and substances that are going to support our health and modulate our immune system, and they can be anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, etc. So the communication between those, the community of microbes with all the nerve cells in our gut, and then at the same time, those communicate with our brain as well. And they do it via the autonomous nervous system, including the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So the fight or flight and the rest of or digest, and the main path, let's say, to communicate those kind of second brain that we have in the gut, which are all these nerve cells and the brain, together with the microbes, is something called the vagus nerve. So basically that goes up to the bottom of our brain and equally goes down that vagus nerve and connects with many different systems and organs in our body, not only the gut, but also the kidneys or the heart, the liver, etc. So it's a very, very important part of the nervous system. And in that path, there is constant communication of chemicals, hormones, etc. So it allows the brain and the gut to be in contact communication, and knowing, for example, things like, are we hungry or not, or are we stressed, or have we eaten some poisoned food, etc. So that communication goes up and down, which is brilliant.
Yeah, which is great. And I think it also explains how sometimes we just feel awful after eating particular foods, because they just don't agree with our body, and you get that message from your gut that goes up to your brain. How can we look after the gut so that we'll have that sort of consequential improvement in the brain?
Very interesting question. And I would like to focus really in two things. And one of them is obviously the food we eat or we don't eat. And secondly is optimizing that path, optimizing the highway between the brain and the gut. So I would like to start with the food, and we said a little bit already at the beginning about the food. And so in terms of the food and how we can look after our gut and how we can look after especially or also about our microbiome, yes, as well, microbiome, our microbiota and that community of microbes, is by definitely thinking about what we eat and what we don't eat as well. So what we don't want to eat or what we don't want to have are all, especially those that's sugar, or we want to avoid or we want to reduce. I don't mean just to stop it completely. Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes there are occasions, or from time to time we can have something like that, but definitely to reduce massively the amounts of sugar we have, the amounts of alcohol we have, the amount of carbohydrates we have. And in fact, there is a lot of research about it, because I remember reading something not long time ago. They did a piece of research around people eating pastries. And they saw, and they compared with a cohort, they didn't eat pastries. And they saw how the risk of depression increased in the cohort that they ate pastries. So yes, exactly. So and then pastries, I mean, is a refined carbohydrate and it's sugar, which is at the end of the day the same as alcohol, sugar, everything. So because all these, what we eat and all that communication via the gut and brain axis affects our behavior, affects our the state of depression, anxiety. It is connected as well. Even, I mean, our gut is very much connected as well. And we've seen in patients with Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease and other dementia, how the microbiota is different in that people. So, but anyway, we go back to what we don't eat. So we know what we don't eat, what we don't want to eat, or at least to reduce it considerably. And then what we want to eat are things like, we know, the usual, plenty of vegetables, and as colorful and diverse as possible, and as organic as possible, or non-sprayed, and within vegetables and some fruits, and we need to pay attention to the fermented food, which are the probiotics. So the probiotic food, which is the live bacteria that we are going to eat, and is going to we're going to keep on adding to our good bacteria. So probiotics like, as I said, or fermented food, like it could be sauerkraut, or it could be
kimchi, which is lovely.
Exactly, the kombucha you mentioned.
Yeah,
and it's so lovely. Exactly, and it's so lovely. You buy it from a local producer, or you want to produce it yourself, because the one we buy, the industrial one, generally it has a lot of sugar in it, leftovers of sugar in it. But things like, yes, kombucha, or kefir, exactly. And we can have kefir for people who, for example, cannot tolerate dairy. There is water kefir, or coconut kefir, things like that, or tempeh as well, which is fermented soy, or natto, which is some fermented soy beans as well. So we can have all these things, miso soups, from the exactly from miso paste, which is fermented soy as well. But in general, all the fermented food, we can do fermented sauces, we can cucumbers, fermented cucumbers, or raw cucumbers, everything that is fermented and has live bacteria. Then we have the prebiotics. The prebiotics is what is going to feed to that bacteria. So we need prebiotic food, and fiber in general. Dietary fiber is really, really important, and we need to constantly keep up with that, because this is what is going to maintain the community of microbes. And the prebiotic food are things like, for example, we find it in inulin, like in chicory root, for example, or bananas that are not very that they are quite hard. Green, exactly.
Unripe bananas.
Exactly. So we find it as well in other vegetables like asparagus, or onions, garlic, all these foods that we use in our cooking, and they make them so special. And it's very interesting as well. What we call resistant starch can be used by the microbes in our gut as food. And we get resistant starch from, for example, rice or potatoes, once they have been, or oats as well, once they've been cooked, and then after cooling them down. So you have to eat them cold, and they have to be that time that they cool down. And so that is in relation to foods. And also also something else as well, polyphenols. They are very interesting and very good for the gut flora and for our gut system as well in general. And polyphenols are specific substances found in vegetables and some foods, like for example olive oil, especially unrefined olive oil, olives as well, obviously. And you find more polyphenols in black olives, for example, than in green olives. But other things, other things like tea or coffee as well, they have plenty of polyphenols. Spices or herbs like clove, or some vegetables like artichoke. All these things will be really good in terms of the food we can have to support our gut. And the other,
it's lovely that you can do it from food as well. I mean, sometimes, you know, so many of us suffer from leaky gut, which causes all sorts of issues. And you then need to take extras to improve your gut health. But it is great that many of us can do it through food. We're sort of quite short on time, and there are a few more questions I want to get through. So just tell us that there are lots of women out there who really find when they're approaching their perimenopausal or their menopausal, that they just find life quite difficult. What could they do to help them get through that stage of life?
That is another big question, Jill. That is a really big question, because it's not just about one thing or two things or even three things. It's about a lot of things. And I would say
the diet things that we've already said would be really beneficial, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because one of the things that we need to pay attention going through the hormonal transformation is our gut. It's definitely one thing that we have to pay attention. And we can see that some of the symptoms are like bloating, excessive bloating, or constipation, or it's our gut becomes slower, our gut becomes sluggish a bit. So definitely everything that we have said would help. And another thing I really would like to say, which is the first thing and the most not the most important thing, but the most important thing to pay attention in the beginning, is exactly that, to pay attention to their body. Because the problem with menopause, perimenopause, is that there are so many different symptoms. Because estrogen affects to so many different tissues and organs that we don't connect the dots. We don't connect the completely different or the apparently disconnected symptoms. So we need to listen to our body a lot, and we need to know our body. And also we need to talk to our the female members of our family, because we would know many clues about how our menopause is going to be. So definitely to start with this and the support our gut, as we said.
And I agree, there's so much we could say there, couldn't we? And but really good advice, especially to talk to people in your family. Mine was completely different to anyone else in my family, but I ate a plant-based diet, and I drank water, and I exercised. And I think for me that I sailed through the menopause, whereas other members of my family didn't. And I can only put it down to, I'd been diagnosed with Hashimoto's probably roughly the same time as I started going through the menopause. And that made me sit up and think, okay, what do I need to change here? So I think because I changed all that, it just made the menopause easy for me. I didn't really suffer at all, you know. It was incredible.
That's great.
Anyway.
That's great. And I have to say just quickly, Hashimoto's, because you were diagnosed with Hashimoto's, definitely hormones is, I mean, it's not just sex hormones. And the situation, I mean, we go through menopause, we need to take into account the other hormones like thyroid hormones, and that would be another thing to do for women. Check your thyroid hormones with the doctors.
And for someone younger, is it unusual to get people with, because obviously thyroid, you know, both my sisters have a thyroid problem, and I do. And with my daughter, she's only 22, is it too young to start worrying about your thyroid at 22, or can it affect people of any age?
Any age.
Uh,
Any age. Yeah. It's not just connected to hormonal transition, it's any age.
Okay.
Can happen.
So yeah, we're really running out of time, but I wanted to ask you, really, there were a lot of small questions I wanted to ask you, but tell us just briefly, what other conditions can you help with? Because we want people to know what you can help them with, so that we can just, people shouldn't be suffering with anything, because there's so much they can do. So far away what you can help with.
Yeah, definitely. Women going through or struggling with menopausal symptoms, but also any gut conditions or any other chronic conditions, and anything like, for example, osteoporosis or chronic conditions like diabetes or IBS, IBD. And energy issues and brain health as well, and metabolic conditions. So metabolic, brain health, osteoporosis, musculoskeletal conditions are very much connected as well with the hormonal transition.
Yeah, it's really important, isn't it? And is there a really quick best sort of diet you could tell us about?
Okay, in summary and in general, obviously this is general because then everybody is individual, very individual, and everybody has a kind of laboratory in their own body. But in general, the best and what I would think of are, always think first of all, vegetables. Yeah. And then think of protein. Can be animal, but also plant protein. And then thirdly, think of healthy fats. This is the kind of very nutshell what I would suggest. But vegetables, very, very abundant vegetables. Think of at least half of the plate of vegetables, and then some protein and some fats. And vegetables already have carbohydrates and fruits.
Yes.
So,
and protein. Have protein. Do you know, I love vegetables, and I'm so grateful that here we get locally produced, lovely fresh. I mean, cauliflowers here are huge. And I can make, a cauliflower can be we have loads and loads of veg, but, it'll last me a week, and I could roast a bit, and I could make some into rice, and I can use some in a stir fry because they're so huge here. Just very quickly, do you believe in superfoods?
Very interesting question. Okay. What I believe is that superfoods can help. But I wouldn't call them superfoods. I would call them foods. Because at the end of the day, it's not only one thing or two things or three things or three foods, or it's not about that. It's about everything else. And it's about how everything works synergistically. And so it doesn't matter if we have a lot of flax seeds or goji berries and we eat really bad food. The rest is really bad food. So I definitely have superfoods have a place in our diet. However, it works in synergy with everything else that we eat.
You can't live on McDonald's and then have your flaxseed and your goji berries in the morning and think you're going to be healthy. No, really, that's really good advice. And you've got an amazing offer for our listeners as well. So tell us about that.
Yes, I'm so pleased to be here, to be with you, Jill, and in this community. So I wanted to offer an assessment, 40-minute assessment, health and nutrition assessment, to anybody and everybody who want to know more about their nutrition status and how they could improve it, and to think of a roadmap to optimize their nutrition and health.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So I'll put all the details of how to get that in the show notes, and that's all we've got time for today. But Nuria, thank you very much for joining us.
This is a pleasure. Really enjoyed being here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this week's show. Check out all the links to the resources mentioned in today's episode and all my freebies in the show notes. See you next time.